It's time now to work on the 67 Mustang. This project will be to add sway bars to it. This car has not had sway bars in it since the 1980s. When we did this car originally, the sway bar came out so we could put the 460 in it, and never went back. This is the sway bar kit I got. Is a Hotchkis 1.25" front bar. So this is the kit from Hotchkis. The packaging out. And we have the rear bar and the front bar. The front bar is 1.25". It's quite light actually. And then there's our kit of attachment parts. So in the literature package from Hotchkis, they had a checklist and the installation information, registration card, and decals for it. So I arranged all the parts in here. I put all the front sway bar kit items over here on the right. Rear sway bar items are here on the left. Start the install of the front sway bar. We'll get the 2 bushings put on there for the front sway bar, and then these are really nice because they're greasable and they even have grease caps on the top of them. We'll split the bushing and then we will grease it up. I'll put the bushing on the bar, make sure everything gets squished in there good, and we'll go get the other one. Yeah, we'll take a look at this and see, yep, that silicone grease is everywhere. Alright, then we'll put this on the bar, squish it around. The brackets are going to go on like this. Got the sway bar ready, we're going to slide it up under the car. So we're going to take the bolt and stick it through the mount hole here. And then we'll try to get it from the bottom side. We have the sway bar put in and laying on a box right now up underneath there to kind of hold it in place. So now you can see how we use the box to hold this up. And we have the bolt that is going to come through the bottom mount here. So we have both sides now loosely bolted up to the frame. So the sway bar links will go in next. So look of the sway bar. This is of course just loose with the bolts in there. Once we had everything in place, we tightened them up. The correct sway bar mounts have been installed. So the slotted hole goes on the back and the round hole goes on the front. So here you can see from the passenger side with it installed and tightened in place. So this answers the question of whether the sway bar will fit on a big block Ford that is a 429 or 460 put in a 67 or 68 Mustang. It does clear. This is a Canton pan. This uses the Kreitz newer motor mount set, which actually puts the engine down and back from the original set. The rear sway bar uses a frame mount that's going to go in there. This will, this little tube weldment here will pop through the frame rail. This will be on the other side. The first step will be to mount this or drill a hole for this on the frame so that we can put this weldment in here. We will use this spacer as a template to mount it. We'll put that up on the frame rail location. And then we're going to scribe a mark on here, drill a pilot hole, and then drill a 3/4 inch hole that will allow this tube to pass through. This will then go through the frame rail with this plate on the other side. And of course the bolt is going to pass through. The first thing we have to do is go up under the car. And we are on the left driver's side. And we're going to put this plate up here, and then we're going to mark the hole for that, and then put a punch on the center, and then drill a pilot hole. We will drill an 1/8 inch hole as a pilot, and then use a step bit to get it out to 3/4 inch. So that's the pilot hole on the driver's side. You can see where I scribed the mark to find my center. There is the right side or passenger side. The next we will open that up to 3/4 inch. I am using a step bit with a maximum 3/4 inch size. That means I can go all the way through the hole and I'll have a 3/4 inch hole. I use a air-powered right angle drill. The reason I do that is because it's got the most clearance on it. This side is a 3/4 inch hole. The other side is a 1/2 inch hole. So you don't want to drill straight through when you're drilling this hole, and you don't want to do the same with your pilot, because this is going to locate much more accurately once this plate is in place. So this didn't fit in right away when I drilled the 3/4 inch hole, and so I went and took a measurement of it. There's no battery in this right now, but you can see that it's obviously a little larger than 3/4 inch. So what I do is get a bigger step bit, and I'm going to take it up to 13/16, and it should fit in there fine. Yep, it fits in there snug. It is exactly how we want it. So nice and snug. I'll put a clamp in here and try to hold it nice and tight, and then a 1/2 inch drill bit will come through, and that'll give us our position for the hole on the other side. On the other side of the frame rail we will have a plate, and then the bolt's going to go through the plate and through this weldment, and then our strut will connect up in here, and then that will connect to the rear sway bar down here. We'll have to move these fuel lines after we get this mounted in here. So now I'm just coating this with some paint. I like doing this just to prevent any rust. Now we drilled through to the other side of the frame. So on the driver's side, we have a different situation because we wind up getting into this bracket here as we try to drill into this. So I need to come up with a different solution there than just putting the piece in there and drilling through with the 1/2 inch drill bit. With the 1/2 inch drill bit, we start hitting the bracket for the brakes. The solution I came up with is I had some 1/2 inch fuel line, aluminum fuel line. Basically pushed it through the piece here to reduce the diameter. And then I'm going to take a 3/16 inch drill bit, which works out lengthwise exactly to what I would need, and then very evenly wrap tape around it as a spacer. This will then go in, and then as long as I don't put a lot of side pressure on it, it'll come out in the center. So basically what I'll do on this side, on the driver's side, is I'm going to drill a pilot hole with a 3/16 inch drill bit, and then I'll go on the outside of the frame rail, which is very easily accessible, and I'll drill the final 1/2 inch then. So that's our solution. So we've put our plate in place, and we'll get the drill bit in there. I'm doing this without the hose on it. Just easier to do that way. So now we'll drill it through. And as you can see, we now wind up with a pilot hole on the other side of the frame rail. So I'll put that piece back in there, and I'll progressively drill this larger. So from the inside you can see I put a clamp on the flange. So we're on the outside of the frame rail. This is on the driver's side. And I'm going to start drilling this out slowly in steps. One of the reasons I'm drilling this out in small steps is that I can take a look to check the alignment against the tube of that piece. The better aligned this is, the better everything is going to work out. And so I'm paying pretty close attention to that. After drilling the first step out, based on what I can see, we are aligned dead center. There, so we got to the 1/2 inch, and that went perfectly straight through. And the touch-up is done now, so we'll go to the other side and do the same thing over there. One thing to note on these outside holes is you do not want to make them too big, because you're sandwiching the frame rail, this end of the frame rail, between the flat piece and that inner tube, and that locks us in place so there isn't any movement. If I suspect there's any movement in there, or any evidence of that, I will weld it in. But I don't think it's going to be necessary. I think once the bolt is in and torqued down, this will be plenty tight. If you look through the hole on the passenger side, you can go and look all the way through the hole on the driver's side. Not that it really matters, but it shows you that everything is aligned properly. Now we will assemble the sway bar. Instructions don't explain this very well, but there's an aluminum spacer, and that piece should go in between the sway bar and the strut rod. I have a small washer here, the aluminum spacer, a flat washer, and an eye-lock nut. And over here, the same flat washer on the longer bolt goes through the frame, and then there's a small washer on the other end, another eye-lock nut. Then we have our spacer, and this is the piece that we drilled for to go through the frame. Nice on this kit is that there are grease Zerk fittings on here. Our next step is going to be mounting it up in the car, connecting it up to the frame, and we will leave the bar hang, and we're going to see where it's going to fit on the rear axle housing. Now, with it loosely put together, we'll go put it in. One of the things I wanted to point out is the position of the grease fittings on here, and that they are pointing out to the back of the car so that you get access to it. If you flip that around, you won't be able to get to those grease fittings. So now the bar is hanging down and loosely bolted into place. So now we can locate where our bushings are going to be on the rear axle housing. The axle mounts will assemble like this. The way this will go together is we'll just have the U-bolt going over the housing, the bushings going to go over the sway bar, and then washer and nut. Right now I'm just putting the U-bolt in place. I moved the brake line out of the way a little bit. Okay, because I am going to be taking this back apart, I'm not bothering with the washers under here at this point. This is just hanging loose just to get the position. Of course, I'll be taking this back apart and reassembling it once I get the brake lines figured out. Basically, I need to make sure everything is centered here, and then figure out where my U-bolts are going to go. I'll mark it, and then make sure that the brake line goes over it I may have to find a new way to attach it because I'm very close to the original attachment points, but we'll work all of that out on both sides. I'm going to tighten the ends here where the link comes down. A quick note here, the fasteners that Hotchkis uses on here are grade 8, and the way you can tell that is by the number of stars on here, or the lines on there. So there's 6 of them, you add 2, that gives you grade 8. Why you add 2? I don't remember. There is a reason, but that's how you know what type of bolt you have. So basically, I am going to go look up what the proper torque of a grade 8 bolt is. You just want torque somewhere in that range so that basically it doesn't come loose. But really, they're using nylock nuts on here, so they're not going to loosen up because they use a lot of nylock nuts on them. So they actually provide very good hardware on this, which is nice to see. So I'm going to torque these bolts down. I checked these bolts, grade 8, 1/2 inch. The top one is coarse, the bottom one is fine. So I'm probably going to torque these to about 75 foot-pounds each. Now with the end links tightened up to the frame and to the sway bar, the only thing we have left now is locating the bushings. We're going to figure out where they want to sit, center them on the bar here, and then they can be bolted in. And of course, we still need to deal with the brake lines. We're going to bend them to fit. You do not want to have this U-bolt go over your brake line. That's asking for trouble. Even if that brake line doesn't break when you do that, if it's rubbing up against here, you could get a hole in it. Now that we have everything mocked up pretty well, I'm going to go ahead and grease the bushings up, and we'll put it back together for final assembly. So I've lubed it up. Alright, so snap this on. We'll rotate it a few times. So now we bolted it back on loosely. Don't forget the flat washer in here. I'll snug it up a bit with the wrench. I've got things lined up here where I want them, so everything is quite well centered. My brake line is out of the way now. So before we bolt any of this down, we're going to center it on the bar as well as line it up so that it is vertical or straight right under the axle. U-bolts are straight up and down, as well as being mounted directly on the bottom of the axle housing. So as you're tightening this, watch your threads on both sides and make sure this is going in even. You don't want this threaded up deeper than it is on the other side. It should be about equal, and then slowly tighten up on it. So with it basically snug right now, I can't move it easily, but I'm sure if I pulled on it hard, I could get it to move. I'm going to take a look at everything. I'm going to move myself back. I'm going to go out in the wheel wells and just check the alignment, make sure that everything is straight in here before I snug it up the rest of the way. Everything's looking pretty good here, so we're going to go ahead and snug it up now. So now everything's pretty tight. I haven't torqued this down yet, but I'm going to do just another check and make sure everything is set, and then we'll torque it down. And one of the things to check when you're looking at the alignment of everything is to look at the strut rod and see that it is basically aligned the same on both sides. It should be pretty much vertical. That'll change a little bit if you change the position on here. So you do have an adjustment on these. It's very nice. So you can actually increase or decrease the roll effect on here by changing the positions. They recommend starting in the center, in the middle, which I think is going to be perfect on this anyway. So now we'll torque down the 33 foot-pounds on each of the fasteners. So now both our front and rear sway bars are bolted up in place and ready to go. The only thing we have left to do is to grease this up, and then take it out for a test drive. And here's how I know I must be finished, because I don't have any parts left in the box. So you might question whether these U-bolt brackets on the bottom here should be welded in. The first time I put a rear sway bar in like this with the U-bolts on the rear axle, I was very worried about it moving and was considering welding it in. I did test drive it quite a bit and never had an issue. So on this project, I don't think there will be any issue with these moving around. I will check them, but I don't expect any problems at all. And one of the reasons I don't think I'll have any issues is that this basically provides a fulcrum point. The tension is all in the sway bar itself, and then of course the end links, which basically tie it in vertically to the frame. So there's not much force trying to move this. You can't have it loose, of course, but it'll stay in place. So we'll pop the grease caps off of each one of these fittings, and we'll grease it up. Now this won't take much grease, and you just want to make sure it's filled. So we'll just watch for grease coming out the sides, and we know we're done. There we go. So we'll do this for each one. Grease it up. Always clean it and then put the cap back on. And move on to the next. Put the rear wheels back on. Get it off the jack stands, move to the front, and now the front bushings. So the installation of the Hotchkis front and rear sway bars is complete. Get it down off the jack stands and take it for a test drive. So I got the Mustang out on a test drive after putting in the new sway bars, and everything works great. The car handles great. Significant improvement over how it was before.